In this morning's Business Insight, the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber created a podcast called The Business of City Hall and interviewed 22 of the 23 candidates contending for the 9 seats up for grabs on Tuesday. The conversations ran about 45 minutes, so not your typical 30-second soundbite. They were also personal, not just an inventory of issues and quick responses to questions. Brendan Cull, who is Senior Vice President and COO of the Chamber, wrote about his experience with the podcasts in a commentary in this week's print edition. He joined Business Courier publisher Jamie Smith to talk about the themes and patterns that emerged. Jamie and Brendan.
Thanks, Peg. Thanks for being here today.
Glad to be here, Jay.
So that's a pretty big task. 22 candidates, 6 incumbents, 35, 40-minute podcast for each one of these guys.
Yeah.
Now, you wrote in the column that, I'll quote you here, "Now that it's finished, I must say I learned more than expected." Expand on that.
You know, we read about these candidates, you see them on city cable or in City Hall, and you interact with them on issues. These were personal conversations, and so hearing what really drove each candidate's motivations, there's some real telling moments about who they are and why they are running, and I feel like being a part of it, and then even if I was just a listener to it, I feel like I would have gotten to know these candidates and why they're running in a different way than I ever have in previous years.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I heard on a couple different ones, different things I picked up on. One being one who's not from Cincinnati, but he's chosen to be in Cincinnati. Another one who's lived her entire life in Cincinnati, and I think 13 different Cincinnati neighborhoods. So it's great to see. Did you see common themes emerge, or did you see them all over the board?
Definitely common themes around transportation. I don't think there was a single podcast that we had where we didn't talk about transportation, public transit in general. Talent came up a lot. Had some very personal conversations about inclusion, and I think that was heartening in a way to hear the council candidates talk a little bit about what inclusion means to them. And it wasn't surface conversation about inclusion. Folks shared their stories, their personal journeys, and I think you get a sense again of their motivations and why they want the city to be a better place, why they are focusing on inclusion. I think that bodes really well for what's to come in this term.
Now, although you don't endorse candidates, you guys put out a scorecard, is that right?
We do. The Chamber did a scorecard through a separate process, not through the podcast, but each candidate filled out a form that listed their position on several issues, and then they interviewed with a group of our members from our Government Affairs Council, and then we issued a scorecard that rated all 21 of the 23 candidates who participated. We rated them as either mostly aligned, somewhat aligned, or not very well aligned with the issues that the Chamber has been working on, which includes transportation, economic development, speaking as a bold voice for the business community, and so on.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, as they just talked about, we had the big cover centerpiece this week on the mayoral election, and I thought it was interesting when we asked the ones we keyed in on who they wanted to see as mayor. It wasn't overwhelming either way, and there were a lot that just said, I'm not going to endorse either. I want to get on council and do my job.
Yeah, not a lot of them wanted to weigh in on the mayor's race, and that's a tried and true tactic. They want to focus on their own race. They often say, I'm worried about myself, and that's usually true. There's not that many candidates this year who have really staked out a position in terms of one mayoral candidate and the other. By the way, we did interview both mayoral candidates on the podcast as well, too, so you can listen to those.
Yeah, that's great. And the podcasts are all still there, so election's 2 days away.
You can binge it
YouTube,
over the weekend.
And I believe it's the podcast entitled The Business of City Hall.
It's The Business of City Hall. It's available on iTunes and on Stitcher and a number of the other podcast apps that you have.
And then they're all identified by each candidate, both mayoral and the city council.
Yeah, I think there's 24 episodes when you count the mayors, and so you spend all weekend binge listening, and you'll be ready to go on Tuesday.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for what you guys have done for the city. Again, I think it's a great job of letting the city know what needs to be out there.
We're thrilled, and great coverage this week, Jamie.
All right. Thanks, Peg.